Are you ready to start, Professor Wood?
Sure, let's do it.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our Zoom call today. I know it's not ideal and that we'd rather be on campus, but I think this will suffice. Before we get started, I'd just like to ask everybody to mute your microphones as this session is being recorded. So we want to limit the noise as much as possible. If you have any questions throughout the session, just put them in the chat feature, and there's going to be a question and answer section at the end of this, and we'll get to those then. So my name is Guy Thomas. I'm a junior at Hobart and William Smith. I'm from Lincoln, Nebraska, which is pretty unusual for Hobart. I haven't met anybody else from Lincoln, Nebraska yet, and Professor Hood always jokes in class about me being from the far west.
It was a
So
pretty
I'm a
easy thing
double
to think
major.
about. It was a
What?
pretty easy target.
Yeah, yeah, it is an easy target. So I'm a double major in history and environmental studies. So at kind of first glance, that doesn't seem like they would really be a match, but that's one of the beauties of Hobart and William Smith. You can really combine your two passions. And so going into Hobart, I knew I was passionate about both history and environmental studies. So I pursued both those from the first time that I got there. Um, and so over the years at Hobart, kind of the things I've been involved in, different clubs and activities I've been involved in. America Reads, which is kind of a after-school program where we go work on literacy in the Geneva community, as well as HWS Tutor Corps, um, similar type program. I've been involved in the investment club, Ducks Unlimited, Fly Fishing Club. I even sailed on Hobart's team for a little while. And then I've been on academic dean's list through the majority of my time at Hobart. So kind of a variety of things, just to give you a little bit of background about me.
And the
And
term abroad.
Hobart,
The term abroad.
yeah, I was in Galway, Ireland until the coronavirus hit. So I've just been home the last 3 weeks, which is unfortunate. But so I'm here today with my academic advisor, Professor Hood, who's teaches American history mainly and with a focus on New York City. So I'd like to go over kind of what Hobart's history department's about and all the great things it offers. So we're going to kind of dive in here. And so the first question I'd like to ask you, Professor Hood, um, is about your own background and the recent research projects you're doing and what you've been working on.
Sure. Well, first I'll just say hi to everybody. These are strange circumstances, but I guess we'll just do the best we can with them. Well, I grew up in a steel town in western Pennsylvania, and I went to college in St. Louis at Washington University, intending to be a lawyer. Um, but doing a senior thesis, I'd always planned on majoring in history. That was my main love. But doing a senior thesis, I decided to go to graduate school instead. So I went to Columbia in New York City. I became a urban historian, a person who studies cities. I've written two books about New York City, one about the subways, another about the upper class. But the great thing about being an historian and being an academic is you get to choose your own path. And for my current project, I'm writing a book about imposters, about people who make up identities for themselves. They can range from labor spies to international spies to women who passed as men to immigrants who passed as WASPs to avoid um, discrimination, African Americans who passed as whites, all sorts of things. And I'm probably about a third or half of the way done writing it. Guy's father's an historian, and he knows that books take a long time. In fact, he just finished a book. And so that's what I'm up to.
Yeah, the what I'd say about that is one of the great things about Hobart is the professors are really open about their research and what they're doing. And you can go in and have conversations. Like oftentimes I'd go and talk to Professor Hood about what he's doing, what he's
Yeah.
working on. And
Well,
they're always willing to
if
share
I could
that.
just jump in, a reason for that is that we can't replicate what it's like to struggle as a senior doing an honors thesis or a first year or second year in introductory class. And because it's been a long time since we did that. But we struggle ourselves to do our research, to make sense of what we're finding, to write multiple drafts. And so that's a way you can connect with students. And you can also involve students in your work. I started by compiling a database, and it was researchers, my majors, who did that work. That was really fun.
Yeah.
Neat when they see themselves on the acknowledgements pages of books too.
Exactly. I mean, so when you first started out, I mean, what were you mainly researching when you were what was your interest when you were in college?
Well, labor
What were you
history is a big
researching?
deal. That was
Yeah.
back in the 70s, back in the Paleolithic era.
Yeah.
And so I looked at the labor history of strikes that took place in Western Pennsylvania, which I knew nothing about, the radicalism then, labor violence. And when I was in a seminar as a junior, I asked my professor what he thought I could do. Turned out there was a very violent railway strike in St. Louis in 1900. For reasons I don't really understand, I went to the Missouri Valley Historical Society one Saturday morning. I asked if they had documents about it. They turned out they had a lot. That turned into my senior thesis. And I was dealing with cities, with transportation, with conflicts among social classes. And that's kind of predicated all the topics, the themes I'm really interested in to this day and beyond.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, as I know you, a lot of your classes that you teach at Hobart are based off of your own research and your own
Yeah.
interests.
So I teach, one of the great advantages of being at a liberal arts place is you get to teach a number of courses. And so probably the intro course I repeat every year, that's a course about New York City. But I teach courses about American urban history, about the history of industrial America, late 19th century. That's one I think you're going to be in the fall.
Yep.
20th century America up to World War II. A course about historical research methods in which we go to the archives and at the colleges and do reports about the history of HWS. I think you're going to be in that one as well.
Yeah.
And that's going to be interesting because it would be interesting to see how COVID-19 changes our research agendas for the profession as a whole. So my first book was about the subway. Well, I have no idea how people reacted to the Spanish flu pandemic in 1918 because it wasn't a live issue then. But for us, how did the colleges survive the Great Depression? What was it like for students here during the 1918 pandemic? I hope those are things that some students are interested in. And I teach an environmental history course as well, other things.
Yeah, certainly a wide variety.
Yeah.
So another question I have, so I've paired with you since basically, I mean, since sophomore year,
Yeah.
when I think fall sophomore year is when I took your 20th century American history course, and up until that point, I had taken almost every professor at Hobart in the history department. And then I really liked your style of teaching and liked your content too. So I want to kind of ask about how you build the advisor-advisee relationship, and can you talk about how students might collaborate with history department faculty through research or otherwise?
Sure. Usually students will pick you as an advisor, as you did. Um,
Yeah.
and it's that they like your style, they feel some connection with you. You want to have a person that you feel a tie with, that you can go talk to. You know, education is challenging too. You're facing obstacles. You're trying to overcome obstacles because you go from being a first year to being a senior and you make lots of progress. I always tell my students, put aside a paper or an exam that you did as a freshman or sophomore and open it again when you're a senior and you're going to be amazed at what you do. So in a way, there is personal collaboration in the methods class we're doing because everybody's be doing a research project. You're going to be working together and writing critiques of each other's stuff. But they're independent studies. When a student has a topic that he or she's really interested in doing, but that is not covered in the course, I think the last I did was a student in the fall did research about the Irish in Geneva. That's really interesting. And this is a city that's had lots of immigrants. And probably my favorite is the senior thesis, since that played a big part in my own life. And for a whole year, you research some topic, you work really closely with your advisor, and you take it from there. That's really satisfying.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say in terms of you certainly are right. You are amazed when you come in as a freshman, and what you're producing then is
Yeah.
very different from when you're a senior. And so
So
it
do you
was the
see that in
fall.
your own, how do you see that in your own career?
Yeah. So when I came in to your class, and that was the fall of my sophomore year when
Right.
I registered for your 300 level 20th century American class. And I learned a lot in that class in terms of how to write a lengthy research paper that's
Right.
going to transcend a whole semester that you need to be doing a lot of your own independent research for. And also learned a lot on how to write really well in an exam setting, which was that class really combined those two things. You needed
Yeah.
to excel at exam writing and then also maintaining a research project over a long period of time.
And
Um,
what about studying? Because that's certainly another component of this.
yeah,
How to
so
study, and which is an intellectual challenge, because how do you organize your stuff?
certainly. And so when I came in as a freshman, it wasn't that I was doing poorly.
Right, sure.
Um, it was more I wasn't effectively materializing what I needed to. Um, and
Yeah.
I had to kind of change my intellectual process in terms of how I conducted research and how I studied. For your classes specifically, um, I really went through. I took extensive notes in the class, and then I would synthesize those notes and say, "Here are the important concepts." Then I would take that with other lectures and combine them into a narrative that um, it goes along the class. So you have overarching themes within that, while at the same time creating kind of a story
Yeah.
that brings everything together. And
Synthesis and analysis. Those are the two
yeah,
things.
and so when I was a freshman, I knew how to take tests. I knew how to um, be ready for class and be present in class mentally,
Yeah.
but I didn't really have that full grasp on how to fully um, take in material over a long semester and then be able to create a narrative in an exam that will reflect that knowledge.
Well, think
Um,
of all the changes that people undergo from the time they're first years to the time they're seniors. Think of even how their bodies, their brains are changing.
oh yeah,
For the past 5 years, I've been on the board of trustees of my independent school in Ohio, and I've gotten to know high school seniors. You wouldn't think that's really important to your teaching, but it's given me appreciation of just the tremendous distance that people travel from being a high school senior to being first the first year and then
mhm.
beyond.
Yeah, and then the other thing too would just be reading. In
Yeah,
history, we do a lot of reading,
yeah.
and so each professor is going to assign a lot of uh, material. Not these aren't textbooks; these are actual
Yeah.
historical books, and that you need to read and analyze and then discuss in class. And so I'd always bring things to the discussion table, but there by the time I'm a junior now, I certainly read the books in a different way.
Sure.
um, I can gain a better understanding of their arguments than I did freshman year. And I think a lot of that comes from close collaboration too with your professors, being able to go in and talk to them.
Yeah.
That's in almost every department too at Hobart. you
Yeah,
know
and I'd say so. It's one thing to be able to talk to your advisor. So you and I have a
yeah,
relationship, right? We email
right.
back and forth when you're in Galway. But it's equally important, maybe more important, that if you're taking a bio class, if you're taking a physics class, you do it there because
Yeah.
you're more likely you won't feel at home as much. But I think you can do it pretty much anywhere here.
Right. So as part of my environmental studies major, I have to take several lab courses, and so um, last fall I took a biology lab, and I was certainly out of my academic comfort zone
Yeah.
in a lot of ways. And so that's where collaboration became a really important part, because I didn't have as much of a background knowledge going in, so I had to go put in that extra work and put in that extra work with the professor, and establish another relationship. So that's another way that, collaboration on Hobart's campus happens all the time
Yeah.
in all sorts of classes. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm majoring in history with particular interest in American history, which Professor Hood specializes in. There's different concentrations within the major. Could you explain the curriculum a little bit and what options students have within the major and the minor?
Sure. So the major consists of 10 courses. There are 3 or 4 tiers. So we ask people to take 2 introductory courses. There are a variety of things in American, but also in European, in Latin American, in Asian history. Um, then we go into upper level classes. There are a slew of 200 level classes in which a lot of the students come from outside the department. I've always liked teaching students from across the spectrum. And then 300 level classes, like the one of mine you mentioned. Um, and so we have, I think, 3 or 4 people teaching European history, 4 teaching American history. I do urban and other things. There's a women's historian, my colleague in the chair of the department, Professor Free. Professor Gale does African American history, and Professor Crow does constitutional history. He's writing a book about Moby Dick. There is Professor Risdale does Latin American history. We have an Asianist. She covers a wide time span, a huge geographical area, but that's fascinating stuff. She teaches a course on the Pacific War, which is a great companion to, it's looking at World War II from an Asian standpoint. And it's great for American students to take that. We have an African historian who joined us, I guess, last year. Professor Slade, he's also a sports fanatic. He teaches a great new course about the history of soccer, which is a wonderful topic. And we go all the way, most of the class, everybody I think has a different teaching style. Would you say that's true?
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
And I think that's go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, as I said before, taking your 20th century class, I had pretty much taken every professor. I'd taken Free, Gale, Crow, Risto, Linton.
So I was the last, huh?
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right, we might want
exactly.
to talk about that one in private.
So I before I'd always known that I wanted to concentrate in American history,
Yeah,
but at the same time, I go in my freshman and sophomore year, I took a lot of Latin American and European classes. So within the major, I'm one class away from concentrating in either of those categories as well.
that's great.
Um, so there's a wide range of classes. There's also a wide range of professors who have very different styles. So Professor Hood is mainly lecture and book discussion. And then you have Professor Free, who's much more like interactive. She does a lot of group readings and group activities within the class itself, and then does a lot of things outside of class in terms of your work, reading responses and stuff like that, to make you that aren't your typical like book report reading response. You can do these like create videos. These are certainly different ways of thinking about synthesizing material. And then Crow is pretty similar. He's a lot of lecture as well. Same with Risto. But Gale's a little bit of everything. So there's certainly different professors that you will be attracted to in terms of their teaching style, and that's a great thing about Hobart's faculty in the history department, is there's so much difference in their style, but at the same time they're all really good at what they do, so they make you think in a different way.
I think dealing with those differences and adjusting to people's different styles, personalities is a plus. What I'd also say is that this is probably a general trend of the historical profession of the last 30 or 40 years. We no longer want people to look at only European or American history. I think you'd find that at most universities and
Yeah.
colleges. You call it decolonization. And so we require that people take courses outside of just American or European or whatever their concentration is. I remember when I was an undergraduate, I delayed taking a Latin American class till the spring of my senior year and being blown away by just the new perspectives I was getting. And I think that's generally the case here as well.
Yeah, and then what I thought was really cool. So my freshman year, I took Professor Risto's colonial Latin American class
Yeah.
and then his modern Latin American class, basically back to back. So it was really cool to get a concentration like that through an entire year. Um,
And you look at the United States so much differently that way. So obviously it's
yeah.
not a course about the United States, but given the imperial power of the United States, you can't help but see the United States reflected.
Oh yeah, and I mean he's also a really sharp lecturer and is really knowledgeable about both like I mean Argentina's we talked a lot about Argentina and Chile's relationship to the U.S. but even smaller countries in Latin America
Yeah.
who have both their colonial past is very different than their modern past.
Mm.
So you're looking at a totally different set of problems, but within the same area, which was really cool to see. Um, but so here's another question for you. One thing that tends to be on the minds of students entering college is where their major will lead them career-wise. Are there any common themes for history majors after graduation? And do you see them pursuing graduate school or looking for a specific type of jobs?
A lot of people go on to law school. Some people go on to teaching, either secondary school, public or private. But there really are no common themes. When I was chair, we always get the question, what do I do with a history major? And so I put together a sheet saying, what do our majors do? And it was, one became a coach of a Division I lacrosse team in Rochester. Another was, of all things, Al Pacino's bodyguard. That was one of the more unusual things, that people do everything. A lot of students applying to graduate school several become admissions directors, which is really interesting, from doing part-time work here and then going on to other things. And so what I think a liberal arts college does, if it's working right, is that it improves your ability to communicate, to write, to speak. It helps you think more clearly, recognize arguments. And you can take that into whatever field is yours.
Yeah, I'd say that's a really good response. And then in terms of my thinking going into Hobart was I always knew that
Yeah,
I wanted to do history and environmental studies, and with the idea of going to law school after Hobart, and I think Hobart's really prepared me well to do that with the wide array of classes, and just looking around our the classes that we're in terms of the students, there certainly is a wide range of what people want to do
yeah,
with history, and it's not just becoming a history professor. There's
no,
there's so many other things.
yeah,
Um, I mean, a lot of people do want to go to some form of graduate school.
yeah.
I think there's a lot of people in um, our classes that are very research driven and want to, um, I mean, I think of like last year, Claudia Carl.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
sure. She's at
she,
Yale in
yeah, so
architecture.
like she's pursuing more research. So there's
Yeah.
certainly a lot of options. Um, maybe you want to talk about your own experience post
Well, also talk
college.
about, so one of my honor students is a labor lawyer in Syracuse. And um, he says that he considers his first professional experience was doing a honors thesis with me. He wrote about Syracuse and the Great Society of the 1960s, and Syracuse was an interesting place because it was dominated by Republicans, a kind of Republican machine. And so that meant the political and social dynamics were totally different. And so I think it's that kind of thing. He was independent, he was doing all this stuff on his own. Um, and that's the really, I think, the great enriching experience. Oh, the other thing we do is I have a lot of students who've gone into museum studies. And the Geneva Historical Society is a really good little museum for a small town. And a lot of people, we have one of the curators there teaches a course in public history, which is sort of history beyond the academy. And they circulate through its departments, and some of them go on to graduate school, say at Cooperstown or at other places. I had a student who did a combined history and museum studies program at George Washington. That sounds really good.
Yeah, yeah, it does. So one question I have for you is, what makes Hobart William Smith's history department um, unique to other history departments that are
Well, I
non-liberal
think
arts?
that we have 10 or 11 people who are all good teachers, who are all serious researchers too.
Hmm.
And I think that we respect each other's independence and respect each other's integrity. And I think all of the members of the department now really care about the students and care about their teaching and put a lot of time into it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'd certainly say that's true. And then also, I think the connections you can make with your
Yeah.
professors is huge, and not just while you're at Hobart, especially when you leave.
Oh, yeah, I'd say I keep in touch with 60 or 70 students. Some of it's just via Facebook. But last night I heard from a student who graduated, who I think was in our class, and who spent a year as a Fulbright teacher in Germany, and she's applying to graduate school in education at University of North Carolina at Charlotte. And I read her application, and it turns out that her father and I had the same criticisms of it. So I think we were on the same path. But it's nice to hear what she's up to.
Yeah,
She's also,
yeah,
by the way,
definitely.
making 16 masks a day.
Just like selling them.
COVID-19
Oh my
masks.
goodness.
Yeah, so she is busy.
Yeah, I'm sure. So, one of our last questions, and please, if you have any questions, put them in the
Yeah, sure.
chat feature. Is how do you make a case for the value of liberal arts education and history majors in today's society?
Well, I think I already did it. And so you're preparing for a life. You're preparing for a career. In a way, you could say you're preparing for your last job as well as for your first job. I mean, there's no doubt that liberal arts colleges are expensive, and that given what is going on in the world and what's going on in the economy, that is something that's worrisome. I mean, students today have debt, and I did not have that problem when I was going through college. I came out of undergraduate school and graduate school with no debt. But I think it's still true that you need to improve your mind. You need to improve the quality of your thinking, the quality of your writing. If you can write well, you will be in a really good position throughout your career, almost no matter what you do. And here there's a place where you can develop other special capacities. I mean, you can work in the communications department if you want to get better at video and things like that, which in this world could be, and who knows what we're going to come out of really valuing as a skill post COVID-19. But I think the world really is your oyster. It's what you really make of it.
Certainly,
I think
and
it's a
there,
good place to do that.
yeah, and there's a lot of intangible skills that come out of
Yeah.
um, Hobart, that just in terms of your daily interaction with
Yeah,
people.
being able to present yourself, going to your biology teacher when you needed help in a subject that was a little foreign to you. That's something you're going to carry through. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do, but it's going to be, when you start doing that when you're working, well, that's when things get even more serious because you're being paid, you're responsible. So yeah.
Certainly. So one of the questions that came in is, what is the workload like for history majors, and what does that look like?
It's pretty heavy. There's a lot of reading, there's a lot of writing. So I'd say it's pretty rigorous.
Yeah, I mean, as somebody who's going through it right now,
Yeah.
uh, I would agree with that. It is certainly rigorous. There's no like easy way out, I would say.
I
Um,
think it all depends on how much work people have been used to doing in high schools. There
well, that's
probably
true.
is too much of a step up from a lot of high schools to college. Um, but people can make that step. Most people
Yeah.
have. I did
Well,
in
I
my
mean,
day.
I think the department prepares you well through your time at Hobart. It's
Yeah.
not like you get there and you're immediately going to be writing a senior capstone,
Yeah. No,
right?
no, no, no. And there, so I'm teaching an introductory course about New York City. That's my research specialty. But the purpose of this course is really to tell people how you interpret original documents. And one of the reasons for that is thinking, how do you read? How do you understand something that took place in the past, which we call a foreign country? How do you make sense of this? How do you parse it? And I think that pays off in other courses, whether you take another history course or not, and beyond.
Yes, certainly. So another question that came in is what majors and minors does history typically pair well with?
Um, a classic one is history and economics. I think that's a really nice combination with a social science that emphasizes theory, concrete knowledge. I've had a lot of students who've combined history and architecture. Claudia Caro, you mentioned. Um, um, Her boyfriend, Zach, is also going to Yale next year, did the same thing. He took a lot of courses with me. Um, it could be history and political science is pretty classic, history and American studies. For my case, that's almost two peas in a pod, but a lot of people get something out of that. Um, it's really whatever you make of it. I've had students combine history and dance or history and theater. One of my most interesting students in the last 3 or 4 years did history and theater, and I'd love to be able to do an independent study. I once had an advisee who did an independent study using dance to interpret Italian immigration. She'd taken my immigration ethnicity class, and she was a great student. I knew her really well, and she choreographed an original composition in dance interpreting Italian immigrant experiences. And that was fascinating. There's so much historical theater. It'd be fun to do more along those lines.
Yeah, I mean there's a lot of room for creativity,
Yeah,
to say the least. I mean, I just out of my classmates, there are a lot of people that pair it with economics, certainly,
yeah,
but a lot pair it with political science too.
yeah.
That's a really popular one.
Well, you're doing environmental studies. I mean, there are lots of people going down that road too. I
Yeah,
mean,
and I think anything you pair it with at Hobart, you do it for a reason, right?
yeah,
You do it because you're interested in it, one. But I think you can also do a lot of there's a lot of room to work within this, right? You
yeah.
can anything that you're interested in, a lot of the professors will work to let you achieve that, right? We're not going to um, tell you can't major in something else because you're already majoring in history, and that
Oh, no
wouldn't
one's going
look
to tell
good.
you that. I mean,
Yeah.
I know what I'm interested in. If somebody's interested in another combination I never thought of, that's more fun.
Oh, certainly. Yeah. And so then another question that came in is why I chose HWS. um,
Why did
that's
you?
yeah, that's an interesting question. Um, so I went to boarding school in Virginia, and Hobart was kind of on my radar that way. And I was interested in sailing for Hobart, and I did for a while. But eventually, that just became a lot to do both academics and sailing. And it's cold up in up at Hobart and William Smith.
Where were you in
Um,
boarding school in Virginia?
I went to Episcopal High School in
Oh, sure.
Alexandria, Virginia. Um,
Warmer,
so
as you say.
yes, a lot warmer. So I think Hobart's attractive to students for a lot of reasons. I mean, I was attracted when I visited by its natural beauty. Being an environmental studies major, I really liked being on the lake there, and it's a gorgeous country. It's relaxing. The town of Geneva is safe. It's a great town to eat in. There's a lot of good food, um, and Hobart's campus is pretty condensed, and it's the true liberal arts experience, and that's what I was looking for coming from a similar environment at Episcopal.
I'm a cyclist, and I like cycling around here, going out into the countryside.
Yeah,
Maybe the
there's
one
one.
advantage of COVID-19 is that there's now almost no traffic, and so it's a lot safer than it would
That's
have been
true.
in a normal time.
Um, yeah, this and there's so many great trails around there, hiking,
Yeah,
cycling,
that's right.
lot of outdoor. I mean, as I said, I'm a fly fisherman, so there's a lot of great streams as
Where
well.
do you fish here?
Um, well, all the drainage is into the Finger Lakes
Okay.
region. So, and then also up in Syracuse and near Buffalo has great like steelhead runs and all that. So, there's a lot of different activities, even skiing if you want to.
Yeah, it's true. Bristol.
Bristol. So I think that's all the time we have for today. And then I think Professor Hood and I will stay on here a little bit longer in case anybody wants to ask any more additional
Sure.
questions. Um, and thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it, and I hope it was uh, useful for you guys as well. We're going to put our emails into the chat for everybody to see. And also you can ask the Office of Admissions to connect with us if you have any further questions. And thank you so much, and best of luck in making your final decision.
And I want to thank you for joining us too. Take care, be healthy, be well.
Yeah,
And be in touch if you have any more questions for us.
certainly.